Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our March 29th, 2023 committee agenda. And also, as a side, welcome home to our Vietnam veterans. Today is National Vietnam Veterans Day, and we have an even closer tie because our very own William Penn alum, Harold Redding, was integral in the legislation for National Vietnam Veterans Day. So there is a program happening over at the fairgrounds at this exact time, at 6 p.m. So as we proceed over to our issues for our agenda, we'll start with general committee. And up first, we have Penn Street Vision Plan, but I do not see Montez Parker here. So we will move on to a presentation from Cone for Thaxton Phase 2 ARPA request.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
My name is Lee Smith. I am the development coordinator for Cone. I don't know that I have a presentation for you, so much as follow up to the letter that I sent to you. Cone is the developer of the homes at Thaxton Park, and specifically as it relates to this discussion to Thaxton 2. And I'm before you asking for you to reconsider granting the balance of the ARPA funds that we had asked for previously, specifically the amount of $300,000. I hope that my letter clarifies a lot of the points as into why these are not just increased and unanticipated costs and hence important to us, but that there are additional costs that have impact on us as a developer and the project as a whole. It was interesting as I was thinking today, and I'm sorry, I probably should have thought about this before today. How do I present to you? What is it that I'm trying to convey? And I could hear my mother saying, desperation is not an attractive quality. Don't go that route, you know? And as anyone who's ever dealt with a desperate person who tries to go a little bit deeper and explain why they're desperate, it almost always sounds whiny. And I don't want to project either of those things to you. And yet here I am. The exact opposite is usually what we're trying to do, because as a local nonprofit community housing development organization, and most of you know that as a CHODO, we're trying to present the exact opposite impression, that we are experienced, capable, competent experts in the field of affordable housing development. This makes it a little tough because we're desperate, but we're experts. I really waffled with this. Let me try to explain a little bit, just quickly, as a primer on what a CHODO is. Very specifically and very intentionally, our organization meets the requirements that HUD has for its home program recipients as a CHODO. Of those, we have a board of directors that is intentionally representative of certain members of the community. Among them, lower income representatives, people who live in lower income census tracts. Additionally, we are limited with any sort of control by another organization, including government. One thing I want to make very clear, Cone is not the York Housing Authority. The York Housing Authority does not control Cone in any way. They are simply partners of ours. We've had a long and very productive history together, but there is not an actual influence of control there. And the other thing that changed about 10 years ago with CHODOs is that they're now required to have dedicated staff. We can no longer just hire somebody from out of the area to come into the community and serve as the developer of record and make projects happen. To be eligible as a CHODO, you have to have a staff person that has a resume similar to mine, with a housing and community development background, with experience in these types of projects. That's not the easiest bill to fill in a smaller community like ours. In Philadelphia and Pittsburgh is probably quite easy. But in a community like York, if you're still interested in working, you're probably not doing what I'm doing. And the reality is Cone can only afford, at this point in its existence, to have me as a part-time employee with no benefits. So I want to make it clear, without sounding too whiny, that we are very small. We do not have deep resources or deep pockets, and yet we do have the expertise to compete with the big boys. One of the things, you know, as we think of a CHODO, we often think of it as the home team, your local developers, instead of, I use Penrose as an example, and I feel comfortable using that publicly because Penrose is a fine developer. I have no qualms with them. But there is an enormous difference between them coming into our community and providing a service that they feel our community needs, or in consultation with our local officials as into what should happen there, versus having that be done by people who live here, a board of directors that lives here and is a part of our community. I think that's why HUD put those types of regulations in place about CHODOs. I think they feel that community development is best done by members of the community. And so there is a mandate with your home funds to nurture and grow your CHODOs and to help them compete for these kinds of funds, not just with each other, but with the for-profit developers. So it is less than thrilling for me to have to say, as I did in the letter, Thaxton Park is ridiculously overpriced. It has gone wrong at every turn. As you've been given a copy of our change order log, you can see that we are nearly $1 million over budget. I don't say that with pride. I say that with huge humility and, to some level, of embarrassment. And that is the desperation part of what I'm trying to convey to you, is that we are now being asked by our investors, by the bank that has our construction loan, what's your way out of this? How do you, before we give you another draw on your construction loan, which, by the way, has an interest rate far more expensive because of the time lapse between when we submitted the application and today, what's your way out of where you are? How are you going to pay for these cost overruns? We've already deferred nearly 65% of our developer's fee. The term deferred always irks me. We've foregone it. We will not ever see that money as our developer's fee. That's huge to a small organization like ours. It's what gives us the money to move on and do the next project. As other things that I've put into the letter, we really are before you saying, for us to continue to move forward, if it's not this money, we need some other type of local support so that we can continue to move this project forward. I'm going to stop talking now and open up any questions that you have, anything that you'd like to ask.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council?
Yeah. How did we get here?
Well, I hope that in the original application, there's been a great deal of, there's a 4-page document that I put together that showed the environmental cost overruns and how, because I knew immediately when we got to closing and we realized we had this Act 2 situation on our hands, people were going to start asking, how did you get here? That's a huge part of it. That's nearly $1 million of our, or excuse me, $500,000 of our cost overruns. How did we get to closing and not know that there was contaminated soil? That's detailed in those 4 pages. A phase 1 that was done by one organization, and then a phase 1 that needed to be updated, and another organization came in and, looking at the same exact soil, the same exact results, said, I think there's an issue here. That triggered all sorts of things, because when you're working with federal funds, public funds in general, you are held to a standard of remediation that individuals or private companies are not. I don't know how far into that you want me to go. I raised my children in a house with lead-based paint, but I can't do projects that have any sort of lead-based paint still remaining in them. The level of contamination at the former Cadorus Homes site and now Thaxton 2 is, I don't want to say it's insignificant, but it's not. We're not talking Love Canal. Our understanding of toxicology, though, has come a long way in 70 years. And the answer of public funding sources is it's no longer okay to have lower income families living with this type of contaminant, potential contaminant in the soil.
How many units does this affect?
All 50.
Okay.
Not because of the contaminants, but because to continue with the funding sources, they must be, the soil must be remediated.
Okay.
You mentioned that your full ask of $450,000, that it does not cover all of the cost overruns.
Correct.
What is the total amount of the cost overruns?
Well, the CO log, change order log, for the life of me for a moment there, I forgot what CO stood for. The change orders I have provided you in a separate spreadsheet. There's almost $1 million.
Yeah, okay, I was
So you
going
can
to say.
see them itemized. And the vast majority of them are either related to actual cost increases or the environmental type things. So a big one that we have targeted and that Ms. Mitchell has presented previously to you is the cost in drywall alone. That was one that when we signed our contract with the general contractor, they had an escalator clause available in it because the market was so in flux at the time. And sure enough, drywall is $100,000 more expensive right now than it was a year ago. One that's not included and that our general contractor has to take a newer homeowner, and if the paint is one that is just, I don't know if you've tried to paint anything recently. For years, we've all just said, it's just paint. If you don't like the color, don't worry about it. We'll just get more paint and we'll paint over it. Paint is a minor investment now. And those types of, it's just across the board of cost increases to the project.
And if you have here too that you are applying for the Development Cost Relief Program,
We will need to.
and if you apply for that, is it guaranteed that you will receive the additional funding?
Absolutely not. However, we become considerably more competitive for it if there has been local support first.
And if you don't receive the funding, then what will the resort be?
There's not a whole lot of developer's fee left. And please understand, we have nearly a $500,000. I think we're up to $450,000 now out of pocket in just our pre-development expenses that would not be paid back to us. So we could continue to defer developer's fee, which means what becomes weird accounting. We take a loss overall on the project, but that loss is money that was meant to invest in other projects. That's really our only resource. Worst case scenarios, what starts to happen is that the York Housing Authority, as our partner, as the long-term owner and lessor of the land, has made a guarantee to our investors. I can clearly remember when this was being discussed back in 2019, and the presentation was, this could never happen. Of course, what's happened since 2019 and how many times have we all said that, of this, that'll never happen, that'll never happen. They have pledged a guarantee of $500,000 that would significantly hurt them as a housing authority. But because Cone is so small and has so few resources, the investors weren't comfortable moving forward unless someone stepped up and provided that. So the Housing Authority has made that guarantee. I don't want to be scaring Housing Authority members who may be listening right now, but that is one of the first recourses. One of the second things that can happen is if we can't bring this to fruition, the investor has the right to replace us as the local, the general partner in the limited partnership that owns the development, making it so that it's no longer a locally owned development, but someone else who was able to step in and take over control of that. That's the end of Cone. That closes us up for good, but it has a bigger impact on the community in that you now no longer have local ownership of an affordable housing development. It is open to whomever the investor chooses to replace with. These are absolute worst case scenarios, but that's the direction that we get closer to all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? I'll just, I don't think I have any more questions, but we did have a chance to have a conversation. And this request did come before us at the end of November with Ms. Mitchell. And as I said earlier in our conversation, it probably was more of, because we don't with this on a daily basis, the operation, and where we were standing when it came to ARPA funds at that particular time, and even up to a month ago, not having the consultant in place for us to have an understanding of where we stood with ARPA. So it was a lot of hesitancy.
Sure.
So after reviewing the emails from Ms. Mitchell, from yourself, looking at the documentation, the change orders, we get to a point where it's not going to go away, of course.
We keep willing that pile of contaminated soil to
Yes.
go away. It doesn't happen.
And so I don't have any questions about the actual funding. I do wish and I think this goes for a lot of organizations that might work with the city. They may not necessarily understand what actually has to come before council. So at times, I think conversation skirts council.
Absolutely.
And I think this was one of the situations where that happened. And when it got to us, information was presented. I know for me, we had a lot of nonprofits asking for funding as well. But reviewing everything, including the documents that you sent, and actually seeing some of these numbers, it's a lot. It is a lot. So thank you all for your patience in regards to this. Any other questions or comments from council? Any questions or comments from the public? All right. Hearing none, looks like this item is scheduled to appear on the April 4th legislative agenda. Is there a motion to proceed with this item for the April 4th agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item will appear on our April 4th legislative agenda.
I will see you again. I have postponed a colonoscopy to be able to be here. So I'm taking one for the team.
Oh, my. All right.
Postpone it to take my cat to the vet. I mean,
If any of you wish to have private conversations with me before to better understand any of the nuances of the questions you ask, I'm completely available. Please don't hesitate to reach out, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving on to item 3 for the general committee, codified ordinances replacement. Madam Clerk.
and that would be me. And this is just something that we do every year. Every time we update our ordinances, it has to be merged back into our codified ordinances. So these are just the, this is just acceptance of that codification, and that's it.
Thank you. And the wait, not that many pages to go through.
It's just one.
Right
one
there,
bill.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, that ordinance is to appear on the legislative agenda for April 4th, 2023. Is there a motion to proceed?
So
I'll make
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And that item will appear on our April 4th legislative agenda. Moving on to business administration, I'm going to turn that over to Councilwoman Buckingham.
So the first item of business is an ordinance for ARPA funds to be used for the Yoko Fiber project. And Ms. Robertson, do you want to address that for us?
Sure. This is a project that has been worked on, as you see in the ordinance, for the last several years in coordination with what has been put together as the York County Broadband Task Force. They have performed studies, conducted a study of access to broadband connectivity, affordability, and access across York County. And it was determined that there is a need within the city of York for our citizens to be able to access reliable internet and broadband service. So what this is actually a group effort along with the YCEA to, and other partners, the school district, the county, everyone putting money in to end up installing fiber that could be used with what it says on here. Develop a fiber infrastructure, excuse me, where there's going to be actual like internet signal sections. There'll be like hotspots attached to utility poles throughout the area that will be providing a Wi-Fi network that would be free to anybody to connect to. So the city's contribution to this for the next 3 years is a total of $690,000. with that being 3 annual payments of $230,000. So it has been requested that we use ARPA funds for this. We do have this as a project that is on the list with our ARPA consultant, and it has already been identified that there's a whole category just for improving access to internet to citizens. So it does meet that criteria. So in addition to adding this as an item on our budget, I also have the memorandum of understanding attached, and it's a kind of combo deal that we're requesting the permission for the mayor and the controller to sign the memorandum that essentially is the city committing to that total of $690,000 over the next 3 years.
Thank you, and I think I would just add that, well, that just went way out of my head. Oh, I know. I just wanted to include that there are other partners that are contributing. We are not the only partner that's contributing to for the maintenance and the overseeing of this in our area. I know the city is. I mean, the school district is one of them.
And the county.
And the county.
Yeah,
I knew it was definitely the school district and the
Yeah.
county. So it's not like we're bearing the burden. That's our, but it's our,
Yeah.
so. Are there any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to look at the MOU that was sent. I do have the one from February 7th, but there seems like there might be some wording that is different from the one that was given to
I'm
us
pretty
during the-
sure what was shared before should be almost identical. I know the one that was sent to me from former Assistant Solicitor Sable, he had sent that to me a good month or two ago in preparation. I did update that. It originally said February was the signing date, and I changed it to April. But I believe it should be, I don't think there's been big changes since then.
I don't have any questions. Just this is something that has I think the gentleman from Big presented to us maybe almost a year ago. So there was just a back and forth getting things in order, I believe, and some questions that needed to be answered from administration and who was going to chip in numbers for the school district, et cetera. Looking forward to what this will offer, not only, of course, the residents here in York City, but throughout York County.
Yeah, this is just part of a network that will go east and west and north and south in the county, so. So do I have a motion to move this forward to the, let me see here, April 4th agenda?
So moved.
Do a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Good. That's great. The next item is a resolution regarding workmen's compensation. And I do believe this will probably need a little bit of explanation from the business administration.
Yep, that's me.
Thank you.
Okay, we have been working with the state's Department of Labor for over a year to work with them to get the last application we had to be self-insured for our workers' compensation insurance. The city has to apply to the state in order to get permission to essentially self-administer your workers' comp policy. So we have been doing that for many, many years. So essentially, our workers' comp policy at the moment is covered by, we do get an excess workers' comp insurance plan. So that protects us if there's ever claims over a certain threshold. Past that, the only other agreement we have is with a TPA, third-party administrator, who we've been using PMA for many years. So essentially what they do is they help us file the claims and pay the bills and kind of do the administrative work behind it. But what they do is everything they pay out, they just come around and bill us, and we pay directly back to PMA. So a traditional insurance policy can be set up several ways, but the idea is they like, all right, we'll cover you for this much, and then, but you're going to pay us this much per month, no matter what your claims were for that month. So what we're doing is actually paying what the expense is at the moment. So it's the same way our health insurance is self-insured as well, and we've done calculations many times in terms of that actually being beneficial to us, that what you pay actual claims for is actually ends up being less than a premium for a policy that the insurance company then pays the claims. So that's been our current status. So we've been working with the state to renew this for about a year. The problem that we encountered is that we have fallen behind on having our audits done. And the state was very compassionate to all the issues that we have had between, everybody's having COVID, to the break-in that occurred at City Hall in August of 2020 that just kind of killed our financial system and everything else that's going on. And we've been able to show them the progress we've been making in the last 6 months towards completion. The problem is that per law, we need to be able to provide them the audited financials. And we do not have that, and we will not have that until the end of the summer. So they just finally got to the point they're like, we can't give you any more grace with this because per the law, this is what I have to, they have to do in their office. So we understand that. We appreciate the time they gave us and the effort in order to assist us. So we're in a position where we have to find ourselves the workers' compensation insurance. So our insurance broker that, of course, handles all of our other liability insurance and, of course, helped us get the excess workers' comp policy every year is currently looking for a plan for us. Ideally, we would like to get what would be considered a high deductible plan, which means that we pay a smaller premium throughout the months, but we are responsible for a larger chunk of the deductible, essentially. So the first so many hundreds of thousands of dollars or so many probably thousands of dollars per claim we're responsible for. This is as close as you get to the self-insured in terms of being able to kind of control the cost and get it close to paying just what the claims are. So that is what our insurance broker is attempting to get for us. If by chance, because we are at the whim of course, the insurance companies who are interested in providing us with coverage, if that is not an option, then we will have a traditional plan where we have a monthly premium that we pay and they process the claims, and then maybe they'll be really high and we made out, maybe they'll really low and we didn't make out quite as well we would have if we were just paying the claims amounts. But the long and short of it is we are in the process of getting this. At the moment, we have an April 15th date to have our policy in effect. Our insurance company is asking the state if we could just finish out April, just give them a little more time to tie up the loose ends. But at this point, I anticipate that we are going to have an agreement available for the April 4th meeting. And because of the dollar amount associated with that agreement, it would have to come to council for approval for the mayor and the controller to sign it, which is what the request is in front of you.
Are there any questions or comments?
What's the estimated cost?
If it's the best case scenario, it's within the budget I already have in place that covered the expense for the excess workers' comp and the claims, which is about $780,000 that I had within the budget. Worst case scenario, they said it would be $1 million for the year. But for this budget year, since we would be starting later in the year, I would be able to accomplish that with the budget I have in place. And then just for 24, we'd have to increase the budget in order to cover the New Year's premium.
So it is prorated.
Yeah, it will be prorated. So we'll also, we won't need the excess workers' comp policy anymore either. So we'll get a little bit of that we have we haven't paid the full premium with that yet. I don't know if we paid it. If we've paid the full, it'll prorate it back, or they'll just probate back, so we only have the first 3.5, 4 months of coverage for that. The other thing we have to keep in mind for payments is that we're still responsible for the claims. Any claim that is dated before we start our new policy, they're still having medical care, if whatever it might be, those PMA will still be billing us for those. So we do have to have a little bit of a buffer. We've done a great job in the last year cleaning up some claims that have been kind of lingering for several years. And there's many reasons that happens. Sometimes it's literally it is an active employee who was still having issues with an incident that might have happened years ago. The other ones that we do still have on the books, and we've resolved all but one of them, is the deaths that we had for the firefighters and the police officers in 2018. We were able to either because of outside litigation where we said, hey, if anyone gets money, we would like to recoup what we have, and then there was agreement that came into place that essentially say, hey, we're not covering your expense of this anymore. You have this sum. We're done. We're cool. It's all legal. Or in where it was the case of a widow, and we are paying them monthly amounts that are part of the policy because of the death. There is a point where you can also come up with an agreement and say, listen, are you willing to take a settlement of a lump sum as opposed to continuing to get? There's all kinds of stuff that happens. So with all those means, we have settled all but one of those, and which is great in terms of we won't have cost for those claims going forward anymore. So we have a small handful of claims that we're still working on, making sure, always that the care is actually needed. Is there any reason to stop? That kind of stuff. So that's what we have to keep in mind too, is besides the premium costs, also any continuing claims costs from our previous life as self-insured.
For the Commonwealth's insurance, how easy would it be? So obviously we're denied. How easy would it be for us to enroll back into the plan?
As soon as we're caught up with our financials to the point that they require. So it always confuses me, but you always apply the October before the year you're trying to get coverage for. And in that October filing, you have to provide the completed financials for the previous year. So so we have our 19 done, then we could have filed for our 19s, it'd be 20 for our 21, but we don't have the 19 done. So then when we have the 20 done, then that would be for year 22. And our goal and the plan and the timeline is to have both 19 and 20 finished by year end in no later than January of next year. So it's looking we're going to have at least a year, if not a year and a half, to get ourselves caught up to the point that we're essentially be able to provide the audit from 2 years behind for our application.
Thank you.
And then for the 780K that was budgeted, that's comparable to previous years for
Yes.
comp. Okay. So the possible difference it's looking like next year would be the same for coverage is only about 300K.
Yes.
Not only because we could do a lot with that. but-
Yes, we could. Now, it's this year, actually, within my budget, if we do need additional, when we had budgeted for property insurance, the budget at the estimates that the insurance company gave me at the time, it was essentially what was from the previous year's coverage, which included the wastewater treatment plant. So at the moment, I do have a little bit of a buffer in terms of what the actual policies for our property insurance ended up being, which was helpful because, of course, we had that in the previous month, an adjustment to move it around a little bit, because then car insurance was, vehicle insurance was a little higher. But I do have, I believe, about 150, if not $200,000 kind of left over, because when it comes to these insurances, I need to kind of keep it within my risk management budget, because that's also under internal services, which of course is allocated out everywhere. So I'm confident for 23, I would be able to cover the cost within my risk management budget.
Are there any other questions or comments? So do I have a motion to move this forward to the April 4th agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
You're on that committee, Sandy.
I know, I'd rather be on 18,
Oh,
but if there's a second to proceed.
there's no second. So do I have a motion to move this to the April 18th agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, so that's 418. And lastly is from the Business Administration, is a resolution for the Yorktown Hotel parking agreement. We have looked at this, or something similar, and this is the agreement between the hotel and the city for they lease
Yeah.
parking areas.
It was approved to be on the agendas for March.
Right.
Just don't have the agreement yet, so then it was like the next meeting. And then just to be official, I wanted to request that we continue to keep this in consideration, starting with the April 4th meeting, because we need the agreement. The agreement is forthcoming. We're just waiting on factors that are outside my control in terms of everybody coming up with the final agreement. So
Would
it's
it make
coming.
more sense to put this on the April 18th agenda?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
At this point,
Do we have any other questions or comments? Do I have a motion to put the Yorktown Hotel parking agreement, to move it to the April 18th?
I do have a quick question. I wanted to, Kim, can you finish the conversation the comment you were just going to make?
at this point, it's something that needs to get done, but either it's being delayed for one way or the other. So I don't think waiting till the second meeting in April will affect the process. And it will give them plenty of time to finish it up. So I think to prevent Diana have to ask me, are you ready for this or not, for the agenda, which she already has to put together tomorrow, I'm fine with putting it on the 18th to make sure we're not giving Diana more work.
I thought there was a reasonable follow-up, so.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what it is. It was like, at this point, if it's not done, then they can wait till the 18th.
And thank you, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, that's fine. I kind of cut myself off.
Okay. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to police. I'll turn that over to Vice President Washington.
Thank you, Council President Walker. Next up, we have an ordinance that the York City Police Department is requesting an amendment of the city budget for fiscal year '23 by appropriating revenue and expenditures for the JAG grant, Justice Assistance Grant, for the period.
Yeah, the
For
first one for
training.
training, I'll have
All
to
my
pull.
paperwork.
Yeah, no, you're
That's
fine.
just getting this information.
Training, I'm requesting that we pull and that we do skip to number 8 for the JAG.
So we're pulling number 7.
Yes, please.
You don't want to talk about it in case you want it for another meeting?
I mean, I can tell you what the idea is, and I mentioned it before, was that when we were budgeting for all the police officers within the city, we now have various funding sources, which is great. And we wanted to make sure that we were allocating the cost for specifically the academy and training to the funding source for that individual that is being covered. So traditionally, it all would just go over Fund 10, Department 500 for police, and there would be a training budget, and the academy would be paid out of that. But I wanted to make sure that I essentially took all the expense that was associated with these other positions, new positions that are covered by other funding sources, and moved it out of the Fund 10 into the specific cost centers associated with those individuals. In the process of doing that, I did half of it. I reduced the amount that was in the budget overall in Fund 10 for 500, cost center 0000, but I neglected to go in specifically for the ARPA, 8 ARPA officers and add the associated expense for their academy there. So what you're going to see is a budget amendment that will include essentially additional expense for training. For ARPA. So it will increase the cost of the ARPA that we're pooling for the new officers, and that's what the request is going to be. And you're going to ask me how much it is, and that was part of the process of me pulling it together. And I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I do know I have that number as in how much it costs per individual. The other thing we have to take in consideration, which made it a little more complicated, is we actually get reimbursed from MOPEC for 50% of the cost of the hours that we pay the officers while they're at academy and the cost of academy. So if we're using ARPA money up front to pay for it, I wanted to make sure that we had a home that went back into ARPA with the money that we get back from MOPEC. So I want to make sure that we have that clean so that if we have to upfront it, that we're then returning it so that it's available to be used for other purposes. So it is a little complex. So if you want to skip it for now, in terms of when the bills come due, we're all right if we do it in May. It's been one of those ones on my agenda, and it was a little more complicated, so I wanted to make sure I gave the time to it. But that's what it is. So second month of preview. Next month we'll get it.
If officers quit or leave, yeah, it's on. If officers quit or leave prior to them finishing this training, are they required to pay that back to the city?
That's your question.
You don't have to answer it now.
Yeah, I'll have to look because I get confused in terms of there is a provision in the FOP contract in regards to folks leaving early and their responsibility as to what they pay back to us. I'm just not 100% sure what all it covers. So I can get that back to you with that.
Thank you.
And is this part of the monies that we already allocated to the police department?
This will end up being an additional sum, it's an additional sum to the project that you already approved to be used for ARPA funds, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you. So now we'll move along to the ordinance for the Justice Assistance Grant for the period of October 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2025 in the amount of $56,859.
All right, this one is a grant that the police department has been awarded for multiple years in a row. It's available, and they've used it for various reasons. Mainly, it's for additional. It helps to pay the cost for their. Double check what it was. For some equipment that they need. This year, I believe it has to deal with some shields that they need. It also helps pay, I believe, towards the records management system that they have. So they use this funding to pay for those expenses as opposed to, again, coming from the general fund. So this is awarded in October. So we always kind of miss the cutoff in terms of getting it into the New Year's budget to be approved initially. So this is a follow-up. This is awarded in October, and it is good through September of 2025. Though I know for the sum of the $56,000, almost $57,000, the intent is to use it before the end of the year. So it won't even show up next year's budget. But that's what we're doing. We're just trying to add that to the budget so that it's available.
Thank you. Anyone on council have any comments or questions for Kim? Anyone in the public have any comments or questions? Do I have a motion to move this to the April 4th legislative agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? It moves forward. The next item up for our agenda is for the police department appropriating money not otherwise appropriated for the Equitable Sharing Fund 26 Special Projects account in the amount of $59,480.52.
All right. This is another reoccurring funding source that the police department has been getting. This is specifically through the federal Justice Department, and it's a program where property that has been confiscated throughout the year is essentially evaluated and then shared among other police departments in the United States so that they can use them for policing services. So this has been something that we've been awarded for multiple years. Again, something that we don't get our New Year's worth. We get the New Year's worth of expense. It was literally December 15th, I believe, was when the deposit came in. So we kind of estimate what needs to be in the budget for the next year, and then when the amount comes in available to them. This is under our Fund 26 for special projects, so it is one of those that it's like you only have available what you've gotten in. So essentially, we got more money in at the end of last year, so we need to adjust what's available to them this year to spend.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Kim? Anyone in the public have any questions? Do I have a motion to move this to the April 4th legislative agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? It moves forward. Next up on the agenda, we have for the York City Police Department is requesting a transfer of funds for fiscal year 2023 to pay for cubicles and desks and 2 used vehicles in the amount of $65,000.
This one is, I believe, yes, at the last council meeting, you were approved that we received money from WellSpan to go towards overtime. And one of the advantages of doing that for the police department is that that frees up other budgeted funds that they had so they can use it for other purposes. So this is the result of that you're seeing, is that it was determined with the other funding that we've received now that we can pay for the overtime that will come down the line, that they would like to transfer this amount out of the overtime line and move it into the lines for the office equipment, and then in order to add two used vehicles to the fleet, and so this is the results of that, including transferring money from Fund 10 to the capital fund for vehicles. That's what all that is down there. That's what we're doing.
Thank you, Kim. Does anyone have any questions for Kim? Does the public have any questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to move this to our April the 4th legislative agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to Public Works, chaired by Councilwoman Dennis.
Thank you, Council President Walker. We have 2023 budget amendment, the ordinance for Public Works for the property at 1601 Tornado Street, rent and taxes. Is there anyone here to discuss that?
Me. This is, we had a very similar budget amendment, but for the 22 budget at the beginning of the year, so that we could pay the real estate tax. This property was property that was owned by the sewer authority, and when the sewer authority was dissolved, this was not sold to PA American as part of the plant. We kept this along with the other property that Dave resides out of. Essentially what it is that we're budgeting, we have a lease in place that followed to us to show the revenue coming in. And then because we're the landowners, we have to pay real estate tax. So we need to add that to the budget so we have it available so we can pay the bills.
Thank you. Do you have any questions or comments from council?
It is not. It's Manchester Township and Central School District. So this is actually, just to give reference, this property is where it was a UPS depot. So like if you're going from Tornado and you're like, hey, it's, what is it, Starbucks or whatever it is in Quabota, and then there's a property where it's the truck depot, and then you get to the entrance, you get to where our storage building is, and then the entrance to the plant and Dave's building. It's that in between right there.
Okay.
So
Any
moved.
comments from the public? Oh,
No, I was gonna,
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna motion, but I think you were asking the public, sorry.
All right, no comments from the public. Is there a motion to move to the April 18th meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, what meeting was that? The 18th or the 4th?
The 18th.
Okay.
But it says fourth on here.
Which one do you want, Kim? Does it matter?
I'd like it to go on the 4th, but it needs to be introduced.
Only reason why I moved it to the 18th is because I just received the information as far as the ordinance when you walked in. So that's why I did request that, because I didn't have the information within the agenda before time.
My only concern is I believe we do have a due date for some of the taxes that we believe it's the 24th, so we would be able to get, we would need it to be approved on the 18th meeting in order for the budget to be adjusted in order to pay the taxes on time.
So moving forward, what I'll just request is that we have the proper documentation before council so that we can review it and have it, so that we're not scrambling during meetings.
The instructions given to me and going forward will happen.
Okay. All right, so with that being said, we can shift it back to the 4th? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, all in favor?
You need a second. Second.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we'll move that to the 4th. Moving on to the next thing on the agenda is 2023 Budget Amendment Ordinance Highway Fund 50 MNOA Street Sweeper purchase. Is there anyone here that can speak on that?
Got that one? You got it? I got it?
Yay, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, council. This one's to amend the budget for 2023 for the purchase of a street sweeper from funds of a dumpster truck that we sold when the wastewater treatment plant was sold. So that truck was of no use to us. We sold it. Part of that money last year was used to purchase a skid steer that was approved by council, and the remaining funds of $87,000 is going to be a down payment on a new street sweeper for highway department.
Okay. Is there any questions from council or comments? No? Alrighty, thank you. Okay. From the public? All right, is there a motion to move to the 4th? I was going to move it to the 18th as well, with the same situation. But with us knowing, moving forward, I will move it to the 4th. Do I have a motion to move?
I'll make a motion to move this to the 4th
Second.
legislative agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so that has been moved to the 4th. Next, we have a resolution, street sweeper purchase agreement and financing. Is there anyone that would like to speak on behalf of that?
Yes, I have this one also. So this one is the actual street sweeper that we had just talked about transferring money for from last year's truck sale. So the down payment of $87,000, and then the purchase of that, or yeah, the sale of that $87,000, the remainder of that $87,000 will go to the street sweeper purchase of $276,000. And I think the financing paperwork is attached.
I think we just received that as well.
Yes.
So. Is there any questions or comments from council?
I have none.
All right. From the public?
Just as a point of order for Councilwoman, Council President Walker and Honorable Councilwoman Dennis, and for the city solicitor, on the first vote, you did get a second to change that date, but I don't believe that you actually voted
We
to
did.
do that.
We did?
We did
I
not
thought we
vote.
did.
So just,
Okay.
just as a solicitor to
We didn't vote?
No.
Thought we voted. Okay, so move back. How do we handle that?
All in favor of placing agenda item number 12 on the 4/4/23 agenda, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed,
Yes.
no.
Okay.
It's all good. There was a little confusion.
I thought we did it, but I don't know. All right, so is there a motion to move this to the April 4th
So
agenda?
moved.
Hold on, I'm looking at these resolutions, I'm trying to line them up.
Okay.
All right, I mean, the ordinances. So what is, the Pelican is what? That's,
That's the street
the-
sweeper, ma'am.
okay. And this is the purchase agreement for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what this resolution is that it's kind of a combination. It is essentially agreeing to not only just the purchase in general, but also trading in or selling the two. We have two Camel trucks that essentially the sewer vehicles that we no longer need. So this is also council approving that we can sell those vehicles or use them as a trade-in. We can overhaul purchase and to approve the initiation of the financing. So it's kind of everything that's packaged in and involved with us purchasing the new sweeper. So the additional documentations you have there, first off, is the purchase agreement, which I believe is like 3 pages in. It actually gives you the layout that it's cost this much and we're trading in for this dollar amount. Your down payment is this and the financing is that. And then the last page, you can disregard the 2 other items. They're going to be coming your way that aren't highlighted on the finance sheet. That'll be coming next month. But specifically, it represents the financing that Fulton is offering us for the remaining amount to complete the purchase. Yeah, that resolution
Okay.
took a little time to write, but I think I got everything in there for you guys to make sure that you're authorizing the entire purchase and everything involved with it.
So
Thank
with-
you.
So with this item, I would like to request a motion to move it to the 18th with time for council to be able to fully review the documents and information that's been given to us tonight.
And that's fine, because the budget won't be amended until the 18th.
Thank you. Is there a motion to move to the 18th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so we will move that to the 18th. Next, we have resolution bucket truck purchase agreement And I believe that Dave is going to speak on that.
Yep, that'd be me also. So this one is actually a budgeted purchase for this year out of capital funds. It's an Altech 40-foot bucket truck for $157,000. It's actually replacing a 1986 bucket truck that no longer passes the OSHA inspections for use. So I have an actual spec sheet and pictures of a truck that, you all are welcome to if you want. It's not attached to the drawing. Okay,
I think it was in our packet. Altech?
yep,
Yep, we
yep,
have it.
okay.
No, we don't have the.
Well, pictures of what it'll look like, not our truck. Right now, I was telling Sandy earlier, the lead time on these vehicles, even the street sweepers, they're 18 months, 2 years.
Oh, my gosh.
Is that everything?
Yep, that's it.
Alrighty. Is there any questions or comments from the council?
Yeah, so as we were talking before the meeting started, you mentioned the cost difference between this
Yeah.
year and last year.
Yeah, it's up 50%. So, every one that gets pushed back, all of these vehicles, every time we push them back, the cost keeps going up. I got these prices a month ago, and the gentleman already wants to raise the price. I'm like, look, I'm going to council. I'll have, X amount of dollars.
Thank you for providing the information within the agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any public questions or comments from public?
No, I do have a comment.
Oh,
Mr. Rudolph,
Yes.
that's Council President Walker, not Sandy.
I'm sorry. You're right.
any questions or comments from the public? All right, with that being said, is there a motion to move this to the April 4th meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty, thank you so much.
Thank you. And we'll move on to Economic and Community Development, chaired by Vice President Washington.
Thank you, Council President Walker. We have items 15, 16, and 17 up, but I see we have a representative from the Bureau of Health, but we do not. Do we have?
I have the health items right here. If I request if you can skip to 18 and 19, which you do have available to you, then I will have the rest of them to you momentarily.
Sure.
Thank you.
Moving along to items 18 and 19, we will start with 18 first. It's amending the fiscal year 2023 budget for the Bureau of Housing Services by appropriating expenditures in the amount of $200,000 for ARPA funds to fund the owner-occupied and senior housing rehabilitation programs to provide financial assistance for emergency home improvements for City of York residents. And I see we have Mrs. Nona Watson here, our Director of our Economic and Community Development Bureau.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
The owner-occupied rehab program is generally funded using home funds, but we have used most of those dollars. So what we want to do, of course, you all know we are in the middle of a housing crisis, and I believe that this is one way we can do our part by helping people to stay in their homes. And one of the ways we can help them stay in their homes is to help them with their emergency repairs, because one thing leads to another and another. And so what I'm asking for is the $200,000 using ARPA funds to continue that program so that we can serve more residents. That's pretty much what it is.
Ms. Watson, how many residents have we been able to serve thus far with this program?
I don't have that for this year so far. I don't have those numbers with me, but I can get that for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And I just have one more question. Is there a income limit to provide this to residents?
There is, so the HUD provides a whole chart with the income limits and the number of people in the household and all of that. So, yes. And this program actually goes by your income. So it's actually two parts. One part is the emergency rehab program, which anyone can apply to, but that's like that is a zero interest loan, but as long as the person remains in the home, they don't have to pay anything until they sell the home. But then we also have the senior program. The senior program is a grant. So I'm very excited about that. Just so you would know, some of the things they're able to have done is roofing, electrical, if they have furnace issues, hot water heater, handicap accessibility, and things like that.
Great, thank you. That's wonderful. Do we have any other comments or questions from anyone on council?
No question, just a comment. In our recommendation plan, we did have some assistance for residents in the city of York and own homeowners as well. So this has been a discussion for quite some time. So looking forward again to the additional funding if approved by council. But it's needed now more than ever in this current climate. So any assistance to help our residents, especially our homeowners, is very much so needed, and I know it will be appreciated.
Thank you for that, and I'll get you those numbers.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or questions from anyone on council? Any comments or questions from the public? Okay. Do we have a motion to move this to our April 4th legislative agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? This moves forward. Next up, we have amending the fiscal year 2023 city budget for Department of Economic and Community Development by appropriating expenditures in the amount of $60,000 from ARPA funds to fund one project manager position to support, manage, and monitor economic and community development projects and programs. Yeah, Mrs. Watson with us again.
Okay, we are requesting this $60,000 because we'd like to bring someone on board to help us. Right now, our Economic Development Bureau only consists of 2 individuals, of which we also share them with the RDA. So we are out here trying to do quite a bit. However, we really don't have the staff. So we're asking for a project manager to help us with our programs, our projects, and like even what I'm coming to you for with the grants. Somebody has to do the work. And so I'm asking for a project manager.
Thank you. I just have a point of clarification. The ordinances have 2 different amounts. One says $60,000 and one says $64,950. Which it's the 60,000.
It is, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any comments or questions from council?
We might want the extra 4 includes FICA.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you?
I'm sorry, that is, the request initially was just for a flat dollar amount. In order to provide somebody a salary of $60,000, I had to add the line for the employer's portion of FICA. So I apologize, I did add that.
Okay, thank you.
So it should be 64.
Okay.
590.
All right. And that'd be the one, you gave that to us in our packets, Kim?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Or should I say, Acting Business Administrator Robertson?
Whatever I am.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from anyone on council? Any comments or questions from from the public? Yes, sir. Thank you, Mrs. Watson.
Just one quick question. We do understand that the first 2, the 2 in the department are both RDA and York City. Is there clarification on whether that will be the same with this particular project manager position? Yes.
Could you ask your question again?
Sure. If I remember correctly, it was stated that there are 2 in the department now, and they're shared between York City and RDA. Will this particular position also share that responsibility.
Thank you. Mrs. Watson?
The answer to that is no. This person would be for DECD only.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I do, real quick.
Is your mic on?
Yeah, now it is. It's, you know, it's the surgery, I can't speak too loud. Are your staffing levels filled? Like, I know that you're seeking other staff members to assist, but are you okay with staffing, is my question, in economic and community development?
No,
Okay.
I'm not. No.
Is there anything that council can do to help you with that?
Well, I don't know. I think it's more so about the budget and what we can afford, so I don't know if you can help. Can you help?
I'll help you in whatever I can. I'm a phone call away.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do think there needs to be additional conversation, just given over the past, and I had this discussion with the mayor over the past year in regards to employees, enough staffing in your department, which is why, of course, I'm in support of a project manager, but it's been very difficult to get things done. Some wonderful initiatives like Complete Communities, but if you don't have staff, and given various circumstances, but we should be able to keep things moving or progressing if we happen to lose a staff member to whatever circumstances there might be. And that's throughout every department. But for this department being as influential in the community for development, we definitely need to look at things in the future to see how we can support.
I would appreciate that, and thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. And just in agreement with Council President Walker, we also, and I know we've had this conversation before, we also need to ensure that with positions that we are having attractive salaries here in the city of York within your department and all departments here, and not just attractive salaries for new employees that we're bringing in, but also attractive salaries for those employees that already work here and work hard for the city of York. Thank you.
Yeah, there's obviously something that's not attracting positions to be filled. We did lift residency. I'm guessing probably close to a year ago, and even though we haven't received a report on positions that were supposed to be filled with that lifting of residency, there's something else. So we definitely, as council and with working in communication with the administration, need to see if there's anything that we can do to help assist.
Absolutely. Thank you. Do I have a motion to move this to the April 4th legislative agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? This moves forward. Thank you. What? Oh, yeah.
All right, what was presented to you is on the agenda. There are essentially three items for health. As we started to determine what needed to be amended, we did determine that we encountered an issue with grants that need to be spent down by June. In terms of, I think we discussed before how we have been attempting to be more accurate and transparent with how we budget in health, but it is so darn complicated because of their grant budgets being from July 1st to June 30th. So this year we attempted to split our operating budget in half with two different cost centers. And so every grant year would have one cost center, and it would span over 2 of our operating years. So in the attempts to doing that, and at the end of getting the budget together, there was an issue with what was put in the system by health. And then while we were trying to avoid the situation we had last year where there was nothing available for the second 6-month period, we moved some of the money, shifted some of the money in the request from the first 6 months into the second 6 months to try to avoid that. But in the process, we've ended up shorting ourselves for the first 6 months. So what you have is a combination of 5 requests that all but one of them is associated with essentially fixing up their budget so they have all the funds available to them to spend down for the grants that are ending, and that we make sure we use our money and we don't lose any of it. So that is the request that you have, specifically the first 3 for the Family Health Council, the HIV, and the overdose and the drug one. That is definitely the situation here. So I am requesting that you take under consideration also the immunization one, which should be the 4th one that you have, which is the same situation. And then lastly, is actually a good thing that was extra, is that the Health Bureau was doing a drive for socks and scarves. Socks and sweats, and someone actually offered them a monetary donation. So we need to amend the budget for their special projects to add the $500 they received so that they can spend the $500.
Thank you. The 2 there are 2 that you submitted that are not on our agenda,
Correct.
which is the immunization and the one you just mentioned
the
for the
socks and
socks.
sweats, yep.
The socks and sweats. Okay. If you can give us just a few minutes, as you see, we just received this just now.
Yeah. You good?
So is there a reason why the other 2 weren't on the agenda?
They were discovered after the cutoff time, that they also were under the same situation of the first 3 and needed to be adjusted.
Did the health department submit these to your office in time?
No, actually, a couple of them, the first 3 that, yes, they did submit that to us, but the immunization and the socks and sweats was provided to me on Monday.
We've already discussed it, but we mentioned it before about having items in on time. The ones that are on the agenda, I'm fine with those appearing on April 4th agenda. The other 2 can appear on April 18th agenda. So I move for the budget amendments for FHCCP, HIV, and PDMP appear on our April 4th agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Those move forward. And for the immunization and vaccines ordinance and the socks and sweatpants project, do I have a motion to move those to the April 18th agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Those move forward.
All right, thank you, Vice President Washington. I do see Mr. Parker in the back. You were first on our agenda. So it's up to council. Do you want to hear the presentation from Mr. Parker tonight, or do we want to move it to a later date?
You here tonight?
Tonight? All right. Going back to general, we have Mr. Montez Parker here to present on the Penn Street Vision Plan.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Grab it from me. All right. Hello, Council. How are you doing today?
Good evening.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you. I want to apologize for my tardy. I want to thank you for allowing me to still present today. What we have in front of you is a finished Penn Street vision plan. So before we, it's a condensed version, I should say. The actual vision plan is about 35 pages. It will be made public, so we will have it up for everyone to see. The reason I present this in front of you today is, one, for your awareness, two, because I value your input and your recommendations as this plan moves into what we hopefully will be a project implementation phase. Alrighty, so before I start, as a vision plan, our goal was really to connect developers and community. As this plan moves forward, this is a high level, so you're not going to see any numbers. You're not going to see anything like that. You'll just see a high level. We'll go over walkability, park-to-park connections, Princess Street Center. We'll touch on the market, and we'll touch on access for all as well. So, let me see. Do I have to turn this on, or? Never know how to work these things. Looks like it's on. Do I just, how do I move this? Okay. Okay, well, while it's here, I'll just go over, if you look at the different snapshots of what we have along Penn Street, you have your college's Knowledge Park, you have your county's Otis Market.
Bring the remote up. And you can continue your presentation. Let me see if I can figure it out while you do that. Right here.
Let's hope we can get it on. I do not. Let me see. We're good to go. Okay. Maybe I should have turned it on. All right. There we go. So you have your college's Knowledge Park. You have Penn Market, which is the oldest market in your county. You have the Princess Street Center, which we'll touch on the history of Princess Street Center when we get there. We have some new development. The reason that we offered new development in this project was because if you look into city planning, usually when you have a community such as Penn Street, where there's a lot of historic buildings, I think the last building on Penn Street was actually built from the ground up, early 1900s. So some new development to add a modern touch would be wonderful. Alrighty. So as we move forward, we talk about the process. You're not going to see too many of the slides where it's so much wording, but just to go over the process that we use with this vision plan was one, information gathering. So what we did is we went out to community members, stakeholders. We had a lot of one-on-one meetings where we gathered information, what they would like to see, their aspirations. Then we met with stakeholders, what they would like to see. We met with some developers and investors. We took in their information as well. We refined that information. Step 2 is we went back out, we gathered some more information. Step 3 is where we're at today, is we put that information together in the form of a vision plan that we can present to you. So as I spoke a second ago of Penn Street and the different assets that are on Penn Street, I think one, we should note the most important asset on Penn Street is, of course, residents, legacy residents, homeowners, and the individuals that rent on Penn Street. So if you look from this angle, you'll see one, you'll see a park-to-park connection. 2, you'll see on the other side of Farquhar Park, we have our major interstates, 30, that might be 83, but we have major interstates that connect you the whole way through Penn Street to your college, past small businesses and residents and parks as well. So this is just an overview and to really see the corridor, the artery that Penn Street is for the community. You'll get some stats that we have here. We got our home ownership stats for the city. On Penn Street, what you'll see is it's 60% home ownership, so it's a little higher than the actual city statistics. Which you'll see, it's, as I said a second ago, it's heavy residential, whether that be homeowner or renter. So there's not as much commercial. There's not too many commercial buildings on Penn Street. So seeing how we could get some mixed use. When I say mixed use, I'm talking about, a couple of decades back when you could live in a residence and occupy it. Now you can't do that. Of course, we know we're getting into different ordinances, but that's something maybe that should be addressed. Is individuals being able to live and do business in in their place, where they live, I should say. All right. Next, we have walk.
Just a quick question with that. That doesn't fall for zoning. It's zoned as just residential?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, yes. And I should have illustrated that a little more, but that's a zoning issue when it comes to, there's only certain places where you could live on the top and do business on the bottom. It's not citywide. And that's something that could spur generational wealth if individuals were able to do business, on the bottom and live on the top. So that is the issue when we talk about sustainable communities, communities that are heavily residential, and there's really no commerce. That's a challenge, and that's something in city planning that you just want to identify and see how you could provide a solution. Alrighty, so we move into walkability, which is one of our focuses. What I like to say is if you're at Martin Luther King Park and let's say you're in a wheelchair, you can't walk to Penn Market safely, right? So if there's access to fresh foods, certain individuals cannot walk or transit safely to Penn Market. So walkability is a major component to his plan. Just to show how we did go into detail with walkability, and this is hats off to Murphy and Dittenhafer, which I should have said I collaborated on this plan with Murphy and Dittenhafer. They really did sketches, one to show complete streetscape from the market to Martin Luther King Park, which would be about 6 blocks. If you look, we also did an inventory of trees that are really eroding not only the streetscape, but the piping. So there are individuals that live on Penn Street, their piping is messed up, their plumbing is just all over the place because there are oak trees, underground that are really eroding away their piping. rodent weight or piping. So we identify those trees just in case we can have a project to uproot those trees. So you'll have that here. And here's more detailed as well. I'll move past that. Here's a summary of the different blocks and how we could attack each block as it comes to streetscape as well as trees. Okay, and we're going to get into our park-to-park connection. I am not going to touch on this too much. When you see the actual plan, you will see the different parks. But what we have here is realizing there's no wayfinding, right? So if you are in the communities, you have no way to know where a community asset is because you have no wayfinding mechanisms. So this is really identifying the park network on Penn Street and around Penn Street. So if you have someone that would like to take a walk down Penn Street, or you have someone that's moving on Penn Street, they know where their parks are. I mean, we can also identify some parks that need improvement, such as MLK Park, or just different green spaces that are around Penn Street. Let's, beautify some of those idle spaces. All right, and we have Martin Luther King Park. This is one of the parks that we could really enhance. If you see, I want to go over here just a tad bit. I'm sorry, I'll go over here and show you this. But this is very important. Okay. I'm sorry, but if you see the connection, there's a walkway that's going to take you from Martin Luther King Park to Thaxton Park, right? Also keep in mind, students transit. A lot of students walk this way to go home from McKinley School. There's no pedestrian walkway there. There's no speed bump, anything of that sort. So looking at Penn Street from a way of safety and traffic planning mechanisms that create safe transit for kids to not only play, but transit on their way home. Alrighty, so here we have the Thaxton Park connection. If everyone here knows about Newton Square, okay, so Penn Street connects you to Newton Square, all right? That connection is beautiful. That connection is clean. Most of the time, it's a brick walkway. This connection to Thaxton Homes is not. As you see, we have trees here. These trees are actually interrupting sewage on the connecting homes. There's ivy in the bushes, and this is number one for residents. They would like to see these connections just as beautiful as Newton Square's connections. So identifying each connection to Thaxton Homes or to anything in back of Penn Street and beautifying it, ensuring that it's safe and that it's free of poison is a priority, and it's a huge ask for residents. Okay. And this is just more connector pieces. Right here, you'll see that's Newton Square. You can see it's clean. You can see it's safe transit. That's what we would like throughout Penn Street. We're just identifying parks along Penn Street, touching on the park network. So we get into the Princess Street Center. It's a huge community asset. So doing some good work, collaborating with Dr. Deli Carpini from the college. But speaking of, your college knowledge park, you have Penn Market and different development that is happening on or around Penn Market. I think it is paramount that we do not forget about a community asset that I would like to call the Princess Street Center. It once served as a segregated school, right? It was once all-white school. It was once all-black school. Once it was desegregated, it served as a community center for a couple of decades, and as of right now, it is empty and underutilized. That's an anchor building. So there are a number of state and federal funds that you could utilize to bring that building back in a capacity that will service the community. All right, and this is access for all. Access for all is really about tirelessly finding every funding mechanism we can on the federal and state level and getting those funds into the hands of homeowners, sensible landlords, to fix up their property and to ensure that they're keeping their property. It is come up a numerous amount of times as development happens and property increases. We want to ensure that homeowners, no matter their age, are able to stay in their properties, safe, in a safe manner. Two, they don't have to sell their properties because they can't, maintain the upkeep. And three, that their property value is increasing as well. And that is something that we're seeing a lot. So, as I said earlier about home ownership being higher on Penn Street, it is going down. It is going down because homeowners are selling their property for the exact reasons that we're talking about, is they don't have access to those funds to, keep their properties up. So, creating programs or highlighting programs that we already have to ensure that we can get those funds into homeowners is very important as well. New developments, we'll touch on new developments here in a second. This is really just a vision of how we can repurpose some empty spaces that we already have that are empty, and create a modern touch to a historic community. Alrighty. As of right now, this is a segregated bar right in the heart of Penn Street. So, yeah. This is a segregated bar right in the heart of Penn Street. Private club. And that parking lot will be full sometimes, So it is a private club right in the heart of a community. Just saying, hey, let's envision something new and beautiful there. It's all inclusive, right? Okay. This is on the corner of King and Penn Street, right? I think we now there's a bike lane there, and we just as of right now there is a car dealer there. I think sooner or later he might transition into something else, so we just propose new development. He's been there for a while. Over 30, yes. So just some interest in space for new development. As of right now, this is being worked on. So this is being developed. Just to say, the windows are in this building, right? The windows are in this building, and it is being developed by a pretty solid developer. So I know once it's finished, it'll be a beautiful plan. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what's going in there, right? It's right behind the Roosevelt. It's connected to the Roosevelt. Residential. I don't know if it's residential for sure. All righty. This is going on the corner of Penn Street and Philadelphia. I believe this is a city-owned parking lot. It's heavily underutilized. You say, hey, maybe this is a spot for some new development. I do know, I just heard that word that PennDOT should be putting that area out to bid. Is that correct? So I'm not sure exactly how much space they'll take up there, but where is that? Penn in Philadelphia. It's right across the street from the York County Economic Alliance.
Montez, Mr. Parker.
Yes.
Yeah, that project actually should start this year. Are you talking about the traffic signal upgrades there?
Yes.
That should start this summer.
Okay. So. It's right there. So we have here, and this is right caddy corner. This is there you go. Right. Okay. This is across the bridge. Is right now it's empty parking lot. We just said maybe we could put a couple homes there or apartments And you could still, you know, have space for parking, but right now it's pretty empty. I think it's owned by general. I want to say the general authority owns that. But I mean, it's empty. If you live there, you. Yes. So, and then Union Lutheran. It's a community asset. We've heard a couple of times Pastor Joe was looking to repurpose this in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So it was inserted into the plan. We didn't do too much with the market. We did just put in there that it's you know, it's being revitalized, it's being ignited. We tossed in possibly moving parking off of Penn Street and moving vendor parking in the back and pedestrian parking down there where the Roosevelt Tavern is, since the hours don't really conflict. And what this will do is create foot traffic along the block that is owned by small businesses. So this is just a kind of a toss-up. We didn't really get into the weeds with the market too much, but of course you would have to identify it on this plan. And these are just steps moving forward, which you'll be able to see in the actual plan. Identify it. And that is it. I don't know if you had any questions or recommendations. Yes, I'm sure. I got some time. And, you know, I'm always available for, you know, a coffee or lunch if you wanted to, you know, go in depth about some things and see the entire plan and discuss it.
Compliment you first. I think this is a great presentation.
Thank you.
It's absolutely beautiful. Who's funding it?
Who funded the
Who's funding this project?
That's, you know, now that the vision plan is complete, that's step 2, is identifying projects on Penn Street and seeing who's going to fund what project, you know. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I wish you the best. I think it's a great presentation.
Thank you.
But any other questions, we can sit down, you and I, and talk about it.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Any other questions,
Yes,
comments?
All righty. Thank you again for having me.
Oh, hold on.
I'm sorry.
We got
I just wanted to know when and where will the plan be made available for the public to view and also for us to view?
So I will email the plan to you all.
It's on our issues chart. I have, next to his presentation, I have a PowerPoint presentation where you can click right on it to see it. I can make it more prominent if you want me to.
Thank
I
you.
can do that on our website for you, Montez.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you, Diana.
And there will be a final presentation. Date's not set, but it'll be about mid-April.
Okay. Got a comment or two.
Yes, ma'am.
So I did get a chance to attend the meeting on Monday, but I missed the zoning piece. But as throughout the various presentations and reviewing it in the future a couple of more times, just so that the public knows, which those who have been paying attention or went to our website to see the ARPA recommendation plan, Penn Street Council appropriated funding for the Penn Market. And in the recommendation plan, Princess Street Center is listed there as well. So initially, if you haven't seen the plan in a long time, it did say Princess Street lot, but it's Princess Street Center. Some of the other things seem as though they would be public works concerns.
Yes.
Possibly. Not possibly. Some of them are. So as we continue to view the plan and keep updated with feedback from the community, I do believe that we can follow up with some of the items that are within the city's control and just show our support when it comes to the connectors from Penn Street to Thaxton Park. We've walked those areas and see the difference between the connector with Newton Square and further down on Penn Street. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from the public?
share the response of Councilman when it comes to the work that's been done. But I got a quick question, which I didn't see addressed here, is how do you balance the development, the increased property valuation, and the possible outcome of gentrification? That's one of two questions I have.
It's a good question. So property value first, how do you balance that? Do you mean as it relates to taxes as far as a property evaluation, or?
One of the, if I remember correctly, one of the points that you made in your presentation was in regard to valuation and the increase of valuation and property taxes, et cetera. Well, one of the end results of that is that you're going to have a significant, especially a senior population, who is not going to be able to afford that new valuation tax increment. What are the plans to deal with that as we increase valuation with the development that's going on here? Number two, how do you deal with possible gentrification? Because we understand that with Newton Square, that was a pocket that was actually gentrified in the midst of that corridor. That's the one question.
Great question. To answer your first question, it's been 18 years since a tax assessment. So getting a tax assessment on the books, I think is paramount, because if sooner or later they're going to have to do a tax assessment, and when they do that tax assessment, if there's a drastic change, it will affect the homeowners. So I think advocating for a tax assessment in the city is paramount, and that connects to your question, because as you have new development, and if you start to have a lot of development and a lot of rehabilitation without that assessment, that will be problematic. So that would be the way that I would address number one. And number two, when it comes to gentrification of this area, this vision plan speaks heavily on access for all, speaks heavily on home ownership, and restoring community assets as we have. It's been made public so that we can advocate for fair and equitable development. One way that I think would be beneficial to what you said is to have a community benefits agreement. And I spoke of this at the stakeholder meeting. Community benefits agreement is major institutions and developers that would like to be a part of this program. On one page, it doesn't have to be a packet. On one page, say, hey, this is what we would like to do. This is how it will benefit the community. And this is what we will not do, in these areas. I think that would be paramount. I think it'll be simple, and I think it'll start to build trust. Answer your question. Any more questions?
Last question, because it's late in the hour. Significant homeless and transient population in that area. A lot of mental health, a lot of substance abuse issues. When this development is occurring, what is the plan to deal with this particular population, number one? And how do we prevent from just migrating and pushing this population off to a whole different section of the city? Just want to ask that. And does the plan account for that?
This plan does not account for, as I said, I want to really keep a summary, right? A high-level view of what needs to be done. And as it breaks out into different projects, that'll be a discussion for those different projects to really get into the details of what goes where. It's a good question. It is something that needs to be kept in mind. And maybe that's something that could go into the community benefits agreement. So again, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having me, and you have a wonderful night.
Thank you. You as well. Any council comment?
Thanks to my mom for being patient here tonight.
Yes, Mom. Thank you for coming and taking care of your baby. Any administration comment? Well, no, there's no administration here. Our next committee meeting, April 26, 2023 in council chambers. Committee agenda items are due by 12 noon on April 19th. This meeting is adjourned. Have a good night.